Joining us now, Congressman, Republican. He's in a fight, 2nd District. That's, for those of you that don't know what that is the Virginia Beach area. The Eastern Shore goes up the peninsula in Virginia up to Williamsburg. Scott Taylor, Republican, first term, running for a 2nd term in November. Congressman, good to have you.
Morning, John. Great to be with you and your listeners, as always.
Happy July 4th. Where'd you spend Independence Day? Were you home?
Well, we had about 5 teams out, and we probably hit, 25 events or something like that. Obviously, we're in a campaign, so
right.
First thing I did was Fox News right in the background in Norfolk with the battleship, and also the ship that dropped the bombs in Syria was in the background. We did that, and then we did a neighborhood parade, went to another parade, and like I said, we had 4 or 5 other teams out there just hitting tons and tons of parades, so campaign is in full swing.
Well, you're not going to get outworked. There's no question about that.
Absolutely.
I've seen your work ethic, Scott Taylor. You're not going to get outworked, and you got a great track record to run on. So I have you as a pretty significant favorite, but I know you're not going to leave anything unturned in this campaign. So Scott Taylor, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, now he was the runner-up to Clinton, as you know, in 2016. He's the latest potential 2020 presidential contender to call for the abolition of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and he's joined many others on the Democratic side for doing this. When I look at this, I say, well, if you dismantle ICE or you abolish it, basically you want to erase the United States because you have no border. It's not even open borders. Open borders is catch and release. Get rid of ICE, you have no borders, no country. You don't have anything, because if you overstay a visa, your visa expires, work visa, you look at it, expires July 5th, there's no ICE, you throw it out. Who cares? You can't leave. You can't get apprehended. Where are they going with this?
A race to the left. Obviously the girl that won in Brooklyn that beat Joe Crowley, and when you look at that race, she's charismatic, she's attractive, she worked her butt off. Joe Crowley took her for granted, didn't, sort of like it was like the race that we had here the last time. But the problem is, of course, because it got so much attention, you have these other folks that are just jumping on the bandwagon and trying to saying they want to abolish ICE, which is a huge overplay. And it just seems like on every single issue, the Democrats are just taking it too far. And they look at that race and they assume that that's where the country is. And it is a wrong assumption. I mean, even some Democrats are like sort of pulling back on it and saying, "Well, we mean we need to reform it." Like BS, man. you damn sure wouldn't call them for that just a couple years ago. So I just think they're going too far. They're overplaying it, and it's going to backfire.
The Democratic nominee, one of the Democratic nominees for governor, this one of Maryland, Ben Jealous, who was very liberal in the People's Republic of Maryland. He just backed off it the other day. He was interviewed on some network there, and he said, no, I'm not in favor of that because Maryland has a huge problem with gangs and things of that nature. You take ICE out, there isn't anything remaining. So that doesn't make any sense.
We have a presence right in this area too, and they have, they can point to the FBI thing with the president and stuff, and the president has been very clear with the FBI that it was at the top, at the political folks that may and did overstep and potentially fireable offenses, and then potentially certainly fireable offenses, but potentially criminal offenses. But that's at the top. It's not your rank and file FBI person, which 99.9% of them are great people upholding the law. It's the same thing with ICE. I mean, it's just incredible when you think about the fact that people who are in ICE, tens of thousands of them, are Republican, are Democrat, or black, or white, or brown, or gay, or straight. They're all, 99.9% of them are doing the right thing and upholding the law. The laws, by the way, that we put in place, I think it was Dick Durbin that came out and actually said and called the folks who work at ICE incompetents. Not the political appointees, but the actual rank and file ICE called them incompetents. This is a guy who's been creating the law in the House or the Senate since 1983. So these folks are simply upholding the laws that he and we have put in place. It's just incredible. And again, I just think that oftentimes when there are races that get a lot of high-profile attention, people always overestimate, or at least politicians do, people who are politicians who are just swayed by whatever the hell is in the news that day.
Right.
They overestimate what one individual race does,
right,
and they underestimate, again, what they overestimate the national implications of one race, but they always underestimate the local politics of that specific race.
Oh, look, I think you're absolutely right. And her victory over Crowley is something that I think the Democrats have to grapple with. But you're right, they're way overplaying their hand. But as someone that would like to see the Republicans obviously maintain control of the House, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to the Republicans and that effort, because, I mean, a lot of the positions now that national Democrats are taking are way far to the left of mainstream America. In fact, Rasmussen poll just came out. 70% of Americans said the southern border is not secure to the extent it ought to be. 70%, that's 7 out of 10. That's independents, Democrats, Republicans, everybody. And 82% don't think I should be abandoned. So, I mean, they're really taking, Scott Taylor, a minority view. Now,
I mean, when you think about that, when you think about the fact, whether you're Obama administration or Trump administration or anybody before that, just the fact of the numbers of people who have crossed the border, you can debate whether the catch and release. You can debate the policies for child staying with their families and stuff like that. That's fine, but the fact that you have hundreds and thousands of people who have crossed the border there shows you that the border is porous. So, like that poll statistic that you just said. It doesn't surprise me in the least.
Well, I think
that it's clearly not as secure as it needs to be.
We have to do something. And basically now the Democrats' position is no borders. In fact, in the rallies they had on Saturday, their chant was no nation, no borders, no deportation. And so they're basically calling for, I guess, the abolition of the United States. I don't know what they're calling for.
Amazing.
I don't know what they want.
Amazing.
It's just incredible. Let's get to immigration reform. The Bob Goodlatte bill went down. The Ryan compromise bill got absolutely annihilated. Everybody voted against that. Scott Taylor, where does the House of Representatives, the House on immigration, go from here?
Well, let me preface it by saying I was with the president in a meeting for about 2 hours in the White House for lunch. It was myself and probably 10 of us total of senators and Congressman. Ivanka was there. There was a few appropriators. And he was talking immigration, and he was talking about the fact that even if the House did pass either one of those, Goodlatte 1, Goodlatte 2, or something else, that it would die in the Senate because, as you very well know, you add up all the Republican votes, there's only 51, and one of them, McCain, is gone in the Senate. So it was very clear, and I will tell you that the president didn't help the situation because the week before that he was in the conference with us, and he was like, "You got to do this, with the 1,000%, and you got to pass these." And then I think that changed really quickly when he realized it's just not going to go anywhere in the Senate. So then his signaling there was the opposite. So I don't really think that, to be honest, I don't think that helped. But I just don't. I was optimistic that we would be able to do some kind of immigration reform, which I think is absolutely needed. But with that kind of signaling, because the reality is you have to have a partner with the president. He's got to take a position if something does pass. At this moment, unless something changes, I don't see anything happening before the November elections. But I think there should. I think that we should lead on that.
Well, right now you have nothing.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong in that we don't have a practical majority in the Senate.
Right. So basically his point was, doesn't matter what you pass, it isn't going to the Senate. And if it's not something that meets his principles, he's going to veto it anyway. So there's just doesn't seem to be a pathway here to get anything done, Scott.
I think the majority of people in the House, I think the majority of people, period, want to do something with immigration. And I think the president does too. But I think that he is, we're all frustrated by the lack of the majority in the House. And I will tell you, in that meeting, he was definitely getting on the senators about the 60-vote rule, about getting rid of that. Because the reality is that anything that we really passed this with big significance in this term has been through reconciliation, or with the 50, the Supreme Court nominees that you were just mentioned with Gorsuch, which was a simple majority in the Senate.
Right.
But there are not enough Republican votes in the Senate to do away with that 60 vote rule.
You just can't
because
get the
they
60.
see it as protection for the minority.
You just can't get the 60. And it doesn't look like other than Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, other than for the Supreme Court justice or for judges, is going to change that cloture rule, which he has the power to do. He could change it this afternoon with a simple, 50 vote majority. He's not going to do that. All right, let's get to.
He's been very clear. He said no.
He's just not going to do it. And the president can twist his arm all he wants. He's not going to do it. Maybe you'll do it if you get a new majority leader, but McConnell believes in that. And so
I will tell you, John, in that lunch, there were senior members of the appropriations from the House and the Senate and myself, and the House was very clear to them to lobbying basically at least get rid of that 60 thing on funding the government.
Mm-hmm.
No, because the Senate, I will give you this: the Senate, while there's about 400 bills sitting over there that we passed unanimously in the House, some of them, and it's very frustrating because they're just not working and moving. They are moving appropriations bills, which is a good thing. That so there's not an omnibus, which we've spoke about before, that it just lends itself to give a bunch of pork in it.
Right.
So if we can pass things, get back to regular order, that's good because we'll be able to hold the line on spending, and we'll be able to make sure that good work that we've done in the military, for example, doesn't get continued resolution and put up in an omnibus, so we can actually keep the good work that we're doing in rebuilding the military.
All right, that makes sense. That good news. We're with Scott Taylor, Republican from the 2nd District of Virginia. That's the Virginia Beach, Eastern Shore, Williamsburg area. Scott, let's get to local Virginia politics. A lot of upheaval. The chairman, John Whitbeck, resigning. There'll be a new selection on September 8th. We have come out in favor of former governor of Virginia, Jim Gilmore, for that. I'm not sure if he's going to take the challenge or not. But look, a lot of Republicans like yourself in swing races have to deal with the Senate candidate at the top of the ticket. Do you support Corey Stewart, and are you going to campaign with him?
So that's the question we've been getting asked, with everyone. What I've said is we'll see. He hasn't called me yet. Obviously I supported Nick Freitas. That's my district down here, but he's the nominee, and you got to respect the will of the Republican voters that made Corey win. Period. He's not called me yet. We'll see. Clearly, there are some things that I don't agree with him on, and in terms of how he campaigns, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to put forth a winning campaign and without a different message. There's just no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality. So we'll see. But I respect the will of the voters, the Republican folks who put him there. Now, the question that you asked, the second question you asked, was the same one that the Democrats are. You going to going to go campaign with them, and are you going to be running around the district with them? And who knows? I don't know. We'll see. But I've never campaigned with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like ever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my 8th election, and we run on what we've done, what we're going to do. That we've never campaigned with anybody else. So I know that is the tactic of the Democrats. I see them tweeting at me all the time, and Barbara, and trying to tie you to other people and stuff. And while I may support someone, I'm still running my own race. I've never ran on the president or anyone else. We run our own race in our district in terms of what we're going to do.
All right. So, it seems to me what you're saying, that you're agreeing with me that based on the campaign he's running, that he has virtually zero chance of winning. Zero. I have said that.
Shot in the way the campaign was run.
He has zero chance of winning.
To win a general.
So,
and people may disagree and be have reasonable reasons why they think that's the case. I just don't see that as reality.
Right.
There has to be a changing of the way the campaign's run. I don't mean all of it, because there are some issues that are very important to people that certainly he's brought up, and that's why he's the nominee. There's no question about that. But with a general audience, if you're speaking about some of the same topics and stuff like that, that's just not the way to win. I think Tim Kaine is vulnerable, and my advice, for whatever it's worth, which is nothing, to the nominee is, look, Tim Kaine's done nothing, nothing. He has nothing he can point to in terms of accomplishments in the Senate. He's been very, very liberal, very liberal. He's been an obstructionist with this president for sure, even though he agrees with some of the things that the president has said.
Mm-hmm.
He performed very poorly as the VP candidate. He almost was angry looking all the time. He was trying to be the pit bull, which was inauthentic because Tim's actually a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
and he's I think he's very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But to exploit those vulnerabilities, you got to have an honest conversation with your team,
mm-hmm.
and you got to have and you have to be able to exploit those vulnerabilities. You have to raise enough money to do so, and you also have to be on message
mm-hmm.
constantly, beating
mm-hmm.
the drum of why he shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so I that's just my advice for what it's worth. I'm not running against him, obviously, and it's not my team to do. But I think that Tim Kaine is vulnerable and beatable. But you better be on message, and you better be pounding that drum constantly to exploit his vulnerabilities, which are deep. So, and you can get around his money
mm-hmm.
by doing that. You got to have some money because you got to be able to exploit his vulnerabilities. But I do think he's beatable.
Mm-hmm.
But there definitely has to be an adjustment in messaging than there was in the primary.
Right. And so you would agree with me that he has, based on the campaign that he's running and has run, he has zero chance of winning. So whether or not you're campaigning with him or support him or not, is that not moot with somebody that cannot win? Like, what's the difference?
I don't know. It just depends on what he does. Like we just talked about, some of the issues that Corey brings up are near and dear to people, and
mm-hmm.
they agree with him 100%, which is why he's the Republican nominee, and that's
right.
fine. I get that. But politics, and this is important, it's about addition, not subtraction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, or not holding, right? You got to add people. And I'm not saying you change your fundamentals, you change your principles. No, you don't do that. But you better be talking about what people care about.
Right.
So while there is absolutely people are super pissed off about what happened at the Red Hen and Sarah Sanders, as am myself. I think that was atrocious and horrible. That's fine. For the people that care about that, that's cool. But there are also other people who care about their taxes. They care about keeping the tax cuts that we passed for them.
Mm-hmm.
They care about not shutting down the government over a Clean Dream Act, which was a completely insane thing that Tim Kaine supported. That
mm-hmm.
is unrealistic. There was never going to be any votes to get that damn thing on the floor.
Right.
And you shut the American government down where there's real pain. The National
right.
Guard lost Virginia National Guard, over $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
It interrupted air traffic controllers who were in our area in Norfolk for commercial flights,
mm-hmm.
for Navy and Air Force training flights. I mean, there's like real pain, federal workers, contractors. That's what I'd be talking about, because that's what people really care about in the end. Some of them, of course, are upset about what happened at the Red Hen and other places. But that brass tacks, man, people are busy, right? They're doing their thing. They're raising their families. They're working. They're trying to get by. Talk about that. Talk about, kitchen table things, not, Confederate statues. While I agree we shouldn't tear down history and stuff like that, the reality is, what do you think an average person cares about more? His
taxes.
Paycheck, his job?
Yeah.
Or that.
Yeah,
so
taxes.
Adjust your message.
Exactly.
Get it right to be able to exploit the vulnerabilities and where Tim Kaine is weak, very weak, quite frankly. And the borders thing's good. That's cool. Like the ICE thing we talked about earlier. It'd be interesting to see what Tim Kaine has to say about that. And I would hang that right over his head. But I think he's vulnerable. He's beatable, but not running a campaign like he did in the primary. Period.
All right. We're out of time. Scott Taylor, always a pleasure. Thanks for being with us. Good luck. I'll see
Anytime.
you again on the campaign trail.
Have a good
More
weekend.
information, go to scotttaylor.us. scotttaylor.us.